Hey, welcome back to my channel. In this video, I'm gonna talk about top 5
best budget graphics cards.
Starting at number 5.
Nvidia GeForce RTX. The RTX 4080 Super at least partially addresses one of the biggest problems with the original RTX 4080, the price. The 4080 cost $1,199 at launch, a 72% increase in generational pricing compared to the RTX 3080. Now, the 4080 Super refresh drops the price to $999, which represents a 17% drop in generational pricing compared to the overpriced RTX 3080 Ti. Of course, the 3080 Ti felt overpriced, but it nearly matched the 3090 in performance, just with half the VRAM. The 4080 Super still trails the 4090 by a sizable margin of 24% at 4K. With the current price premiums on the RTX 4090, likely caused by AI companies buying up consumer GPUs, we've also seen increased pricing on the RTX 4080 Super. Many cards cost about $200 over MSRP, though at least a couple of MSRP-priced models are available. If you're interested, check out the PNY RTX 4080 Super and Zotac 4080 Super at $999. That's $700 less than the cheapest 4090, if you're keeping track. On paper at least, the 4080 Super is certainly better than the now discontinued vanilla 4080, even if the upgrades are relatively minor. The 4080 Super increases core counts by 5%, GPU clocks by 2%, and VRM clocks by 3%, which works out to a net 3% increase in performance. Faster and less expensive would be moving in the right direction, if cards were available at MSRP.
Coming at number 4.
AMD Radeon RX. The Radeon RX 7600 and its Navi 33 GPU have replaced the previous generation Navi 23 parts, mostly as a sideways move with a few extra features. Performance ends up just slightly faster than the RX 6650 XT, while using about 20W less power, for about $20 extra. The extras include superior AI performance, if that matters to you, in a budget GPU, AV1 encoding and decoding hardware, and DisplayPort 2.1 UHBR 13.5 outputs. Prices dropped about $20 when the RX 7600 first appeared, but have crept back up to $259 at present. The previous generation RX 6600 class GPUs have generally kept pace on pricing changes. Specs are similar as well, with the same 8GB GDDR6 and a 128-bit memory interface. Both the 6650 XT and RX 7600 also use pretty much the same 18 gigabits per second memory. The 6650 XT is clocked at 17.5 gigabits per second, so bandwidth isn't a big factor. Across our test suite of 15 games, the RX 7600 outperformed the RX 6650 XT by 6% overall at 1080p, and just 3% at 1440p Ultra. There really is almost no discernible difference in gaming performance. The RX 7600 does substantially better in AI workloads like Stable Diffusion, however, not as fast as Nvidia's 4060, but far more competitive than the RX 6650 XT when using the latest projects.
At number 3.
AMD Radeon RX. After the successful RX 6700 XT and RX 6750 XT, we had high hopes for the RX 7700 XT. It only partially delivers, though a recent official price cut definitely helps, and retail prices can lop another $20 to $50 off the cost. AMD's latest generation mid-range/high-end offering follows the usual path, trimming specs compared to the top models with a smaller Navi 32 GPU that can sell at lower prices. Both the RX 7800 XT, discussed above, and 7700 XT use the same Navi 32 GCD, graphics compute die, but the 7800 XT has 4 MCDs, memory cache dies, while the 7700 XT cuts that number down to 3, as well as having fewer CUs, compute units, enabled on the GCD. The result of the cuts is that the RX 7700 XT ends up around 14% slower than the 7800 XT, and currently costs 14% less as well. Linear scaling of price and performance. In other words, we like the 7800 XT and 7900 GRE more, which is why it's higher up on this list, but the 7700 XT still fills a niche. Basically, any of these three AMD GPUs warrants consideration, depending on your budget.
Number 2 of my list.
Nvidia GeForce RTX. What is this, 2016? Nvidia's RTX 4060 Ti is a $399 graphics card, with only 8GB of memory and a 128-bit interface, or alternatively, the 4060 Ti 16GB doubles the VRAM on the same 128-bit interface, for about $55 extra. We thought we had left 8GB cards in the past after the RTX 3060 gave us 12GB, but Nvidia seems more intent on cost-cutting and market segmentation these days. But the RTX 4060 Ti does technically beat the previous generation RTX 3060 Ti by 10 to 15% overall in our testing. There are plenty of reasons to waffle on this one. The larger L2 cache does mostly overcome the limited bandwidth from the 128-bit interface, but cache hit rates go down as resolution increases, meaning 1440p and especially 4K can be problematic. At least the price is the same as the outgoing RTX 3060 Ti. Street prices start at $375 right now, and you do get some new features. But the 8GB still feels incredibly stingy, and the 16GB model mostly helps at 4K Ultra, at which point the performance still tends to be poor. As with the RTX 4060 above, note that Nvidia reduced the number of GPU cores on the RTX 4060 Ti compared to its RTX 3060 Ti predecessor. The 3060 Ti had 38 SMs while the 4060 Ti only has 34 SMs. Again, 45% higher GPU clocks make up for the 11% core count deficit, but the reduction in memory interface width and GPU cores does feel incredibly stingy on Nvidia's part.
And number 1.
Intel Arc A380. The Arc A380 perhaps best represents Intel's dedicated GPU journey over the past year. Our initial review found a lot of problems, including game incompatibility, rendering errors, and sometimes downright awful performance. More than a year of driver updates has fixed most of those problems, and if you're looking for a potentially interesting HTPC graphics card, video codec support remains a strong point. We've routinely seen the Arc A380 on sale for $99, and at that point, we can forgive a lot of its faults. We suggest you hold out for another sale if you want to pick one up, rather than spending more. The current least expensive cards start at $119. It's still very much a budget GPU, with slower performance than the RX 6500 XT, but it has 6GB of VRAM and costs less. The Intel Arc Alchemist architecture was the first to add AV1 encoding and decoding support, and the quality of the encodes ranks right up there with Nvidia Ada, with AMD Radeon A3 trailing by a decent margin. And the A380 is just as fast at encoding as the beefier A770. Note also that we're reporting boost clocks, as in our experience that's where the GPU runs, across our full test suite. The A380 averaged 2,449 MHz on the Gunneer card that comes with a 50 MHz factory overclock. Intel's 2050 MHz game clock is very conservative, in other words.
Check out this video description for latest price and more informations. Thank you for watching this video. Please subscribe and stay tuned.